Devlin here, and I'm here with my friend Ryan again with another video, and today's is everything about back. We're gonna get set up here in the first exercise with a seated cable row, because this is an exercise that I've noticed many beginners tend to go to. It is a very seemingly easy exercise to jump in when you don't really know much else what's going on in the gym. And I do see a lot of small mistakes made very consistently, and I think that we can make some touches up on this with Ryan. So Ryan, go ahead, hop on in cable row. I wanna see how you set up. We're gonna take a look at some different things. We're gonna point out goods and bads and go from there. So go ahead. Okay, so there's a whole lot here that we're gonna work with initially. So we're gonna start with the first thing that I do like. Foot placement is good. We do have a slight bit of bend in the knee, but not too much. Mostly straight is gonna give a lot of stability for the movement. First thing that I noticed that's a bad thing though is I want to get his chest up instead. So go ahead and let your arms stretch out through. Notice his back is decently rounded here. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna say proud chest. So think about arching your back here and chest up high. And now I want you to hinge at the hips forward. I want you to lean forward, lean forward, lean forward, lean forward. Good. Okay, and so we're gonna have a little bit higher here. Now, one thing to note with any kind of row exercise, the line of pull dictates which muscles you're hitting. There's a whole lot of different muscles back here in your back, and you wanna hit the ones that you want to hit. Okay, and so right here, this angle is going to allow us to hit the mid and upper traps, right up here with some rear delts as well, with very minimal lat because of this kind of angle. Now, if we were to get Ryan to hinge forward more, like this, what that's gonna do is that's actually gonna allow us to hit more of that mid back with more lats as well. So base your angle here off of where you wanna hit. If you wanna hit your upper traps, you can actually hinge backwards to about right here. And then if Ryan was to row up to his upper chest, you're gonna be getting up here. But before we get into all of the other nuance aspects, we're gonna talk about this handle here. So this handle is a V handle, which is very widely used by most of the old school big name bodybuilders. You will find one in every single gym that you go to that has a seated cable row machine. And what I don't like about this is most individuals are much larger than a 16-month child. And so therefore, their shoulder width is gonna be way too wide to use this. So what we're actually gonna grab instead is this D-bar handle. So we're still getting that neutral grip, but what we're allowing with this is a full range of motion for all the muscles in your back. So Ryan, I'm gonna have you hold this up in front of you. So all front, and I want you to pull it in, like as if you're doing a row. So right here, go ahead, pause it right there. So right there, what we're doing is we got zero shoulder movement, and if we were trying to squeeze the muscles in the back, his arms are gonna be limited because they're so close together here. This is why it's great for 16-month-old children. So if we throw that off to the side, and we use this handle, we're gonna have you go all the way out, Ryan, and then as you pull, drive those elbows back, come back around here cold, we're gonna be able to see a whole shitload of engagement across his back. Everything here is flexed. So go ahead and forward, and then come all the way back as well. The amount of range of motion difference is from here to here. That's your entire back. When you're using that small handle, you're not really getting a lot of engagement from your back muscles. Okay, so before we switch the handles, I was talking to Ryan, we wanna make sure that your chest is up. And so what that is you're gonna have like that proud chest, that arch here in your back. Go ahead, you just crank out some reps, you're good. Crank out some reps. Yep, good. I want this a little bit, yeah, go ahead, we're gonna angle this slightly. And I want you to try to drive your elbows back and down. Good. So now what we're trying to do now is I want to try to get more of that mid-back engagement. So we're going to have Ryan hinge forward a little bit at the hips. So I want you to bend your knees a little bit less. A little bit less, good. Hinge a little bit forward, good. And so at the peak eccentric, pause for a second here, what we're trying to do is we're actually allowing his shoulder joints to roll forward. Your shoulder joint rolls around your ribcage to the front to allow your whole back to open up. And then as he goes through the contraction, he's gonna be pulling his shoulders and his elbows back and around. Go ahead and do some reps. Good. Comfortable? Yep. Good. And if we're looking here at the line of pull, fits perfectly with that mid back. Another key thing to note too, which is really, really good here, is the alignment from wrists to elbows. So your elbows and your wrists are meant to follow each other with all push or pull movements. So right here, peak contraction, pause there. You can see that the elbow and the wrist is in a perfectly straight line, and go ahead. And as he comes through, the elbow follows the wrist. As he contracts, the wrist follows the elbow. It's a really good row. Before you can even perform any kind of rows, the first decision you have to make beyond once you figure out which machine you're going to be doing is which handle you're going to be using. Now when it comes to hitting the muscles in your back, there is a little bit of a difference whether or not you're going to have an overhand grip, which is called pronated, a neutral grip, or underhand, which is called supinated grip. When you have a pronated grip, if you guys that watched my shoulders video, you'll be able to remember that when those elbows are wide, that's when you're able to hit your rear delts more. And so when you have that pronated overhand grip, what you're doing is you typically are setting yourself up to hit a little bit more of that upper back, a little bit more of your teres, or a little bit more of your rear delt. When you tend to go to more of like a neutral or a supinated grip, that pulls your arm around and allows for more stretch in your lats and be able to get more lat engagement and less of that rear delt movement. So we're looking at the two different bars here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to use the standard lat pull down bar, where Ryan will be able to hold this overhand. When it comes to a standard lat pull down, first thing I recommend to people is to figure out your hand placement. And so this little crease that's right here before each bend is equal on each side. And so I tell everybody, put the tip of your thumb in there first, and then you extend your hand out from there on both sides. This way you can guarantee that your grip is matching from side to side. Go ahead. So first couple things that I'm watching is half of the cable into the joints, how far he's coming down, where his foot placement is, and how his body is set up. And so right here, he's kind of leaning back quite a bit, and so it's almost like he's setting up for like a high row. Now another thing too is he's kind of coming down a little bit too far of what I would like to prefer. So I would like people to stop right around here. Reason being is when he pulls more, go ahead and pull further, you'll notice that the angle of his elbows have to change and start pulling backwards instead of pulling downwards. And so we're gonna stop the movement at about right here. Go ahead. Right there, yep. Now with this, you should be able to see that there's a straight line from this cable boom all the way through the cable, through his forearm, into his upper arms. This makes sure that all the tension is directly on the muscles the way that it's supposed to be. You don't have any extra tension on the sides of your elbows. Performing reps like this is not going to lead to any kind of injury in the long term. But now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of change a little bit of his stature. So you go ahead and put the bar up for a second. So this time when you sit down, Ryan, what I want you to do is I want your ass to be scooted to the far back of the seat, and I want just the tips of your knees underneath here, enough that you can still go on your tippy toes and hold yourself in. So go ahead. Good, and so I want you to be scooched back a little bit more. Good, I want you upright a little bit more. So just like, yeah, think like you're, yeah, more straight up. And so here, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna have a slight internal rotation of the elbows, just slightly, not a lot. We still want his arms to be aligned, but now I want you to pull straight down. So about right here, good. And that's a little bit better of a pull down. So we have more of that shoulder rotation. We wanna have those elbows underneath. Yeah, go ahead, pull. Now, oh, that was a little bit too much. We're gonna go a little bit closer to your face still. So a little bit more forward, a little bit closer to your face. Right here, perfect. Now again, we still have everything kind of lined up. And this is actually going to hit your lats a little bit better than when he was leaning backwards. Even though you don't have that neutral or pronated grip, your lats still will come up and have to expand and be able to pull in. It's difficult, awkward, uncomfortable.
A little bit different, but
okay.
I can feel my lats definitely.
Good. So we switched the grip around to the mag grip. Now the mag grip is a more neutral grip. It relatively matches his shoulder width, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. So now we want to have like a really heavy focus more on your lats. But when you are trying to hit your lats in a pull down movement, you do not want to have your chest up high and your back arched. In fact, you actually kind of want to have a slight crunch in your abs where you almost have your back rounded, where it's properly just straight like so. So go ahead, Ryan, we're gonna have you grab this. You're gonna come back down. I want you to have your ass scooted back to the edge, just like before. But now I want you to think about crunching your abs slightly. Good, pull your head back a little bit. And now I want you to drive your elbows down to here, mid-leg, is what you're thinking. Good, just like that, perfect. Yep. Good, now you can stretch all the way up, keeps going, right to there, perfect. Yep. Good. Now, anytime that you are trying to focus on hitting your lat muscles, you have to think of the function of the muscle and the shape of the muscle. So Cole, if you want to come around here for a second, can you pause right here and hold that? Yep. Perfect. So we have your lat insertions are up here and the back right above where the armpit is and comes down around into your spine and down above your pelvis. This is the function of the lat, is to pull from here to here. And so what we're trying to do is, go ahead, you do some reps, is we're trying to cue getting point A to point B as much as possible. And the best way to do this without getting more engagement of the upper back is to cue Ryan to drive his elbows down towards his hips. So drive those elbows down towards your hips, because right here, what could happen at that bottom of that rep, I want you to come all the way down to your hips, Ryan, and I want you to pull backwards more. So this right here is your rear delt and all these other muscles taking over. We don't need that. Good, go ahead. So when we are trying to think about hitting those lats, we want to, at peak eccentric, we want to think about letting those shoulders raise and lift so that you can still keep your lat engaged, but then you're trying to drive that shoulder and that elbow back and down. If you keep driving that elbow back, what's gonna happen is we're gonna go from lat to rear delt. So we just kind of go from here down to here. It's kind of like, you know, when you're just like, yes! One of those. That's how you do lats. Now, when it comes to your lats, this is a muscle that I've noticed with a lot of my clients, people who are newer in the gym, it seems like they're usually locked up on one side. I have a client that's a server and she always holds her tray over here. We believe that that's part of the reason that her left lat is really locked out. We've got other individuals with other things, shoulder injuries. Sometimes it's just working at a desk and like only having one arm moving. So in order to combat this, I've kind of tried troubleshooting the lat muscle, and I've got a couple of different beginner exercises that are really good for you to be able to learn how to try to engage your lats a little bit better. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have Ryan come down and kneel down here. I want you to go your right knee down. So we have a single arm kneeling high row. Now what we're gonna do here, so we're kneeling on the same leg of the arm that we are working. This keeps his body nice and stable. He's got his other leg over there, pushed out, keeping him stable. Chest is up, and what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna have him hinge forward slightly. And so here, what we have is we have a neutral grip. We're actually gonna do a semi-supinated grip. So it's like a slight cross in between neutral and supinated, so it's gonna be like so. And so from here, when he reaches up high, that's gonna ensure that his lat is engaged and actually has to stretch with this movement. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to drive that shoulder and that elbow back and down to about this point right here. Yep, go ahead, and just do some reps just like this. So that stretch right there allows the lat to be unlocked and makes sure that it actually stretches. And then as you come down, perfect. As you perform reps like this, you're gonna notice your body's going to wanna have a little bit of torso rotation. A little bit is not a problem. Where it is a problem is if you end up starting to rotate like this, where you're just like stretching up and then coming through. The reason that this would be a problem is you're getting conflated results. You'll be thinking that you're advancing with your lat training, when in reality you're just strengthening your core. So what I recommend to people is to try to stabilize your body as much as you can. If there's a little bit of shoulder rotation, body rotation, that's not a problem, but just make sure it's not massive, so be aware of your body and the way that you're moving. Good, we're gonna have you switch knees, Ryan. So when we're doing this, we're also making sure that all of our joints are aligned, just like with any of the other kinds of rows or any kind of presses. We're making sure that the cable is fully aligned to the shoulder joint, so we're not trying to pull outwards or any of that kind of stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up and stretch through right there and drive down to about right there. Good. Now, thankfully, Ryan doesn't actually have any issues engaging to either of his lats. So we can see here, his shoulders moves nicely. stretches nicely, his elbow comes back, and he can stop at the right point without it feeling and looking like his arm is just pivoting in one spot. Drive that elbow down to your hip. Good. Now, one thing you want to avoid throughout all of your single arm movements as well, or even in kind of cables like this, so you'll notice there's a slight bit of like a rotation as he's performing the rep. A little bit is not bad. What I don't want to see from anybody is starting overhand and then pulling in to underhand. You're changing the muscles halfway through that movement. And if your goal is just to put on muscles, like you're new into the bodybuilding aspect or any of that kind of thing, is you want to make sure that you're hitting the muscles directly. If you need some sort of dynamic training, or if you're an athlete in some different kind of sport, then this doesn't necessarily go to you. You might need to have those kinds of movements, so disregard that. But for the vast majority of individuals, you do not specifically need that kind of rotation in any of your movements. So I'd recommend keeping with a neutral or semi-neutral, semi-supinated grip through the whole movement, or pronated grip through the whole movement as well. Go ahead, all the way up. Okay, next exercise is for everything back, is we're gonna do another super basic, good beginner, great exercise though, one arm dumbbell row. And so we're gonna have Ryan get on the bench here. He's going to have his opposite knee than his working hand is what's gonna be up here to stabilize. He can reach out forward. He's gonna hold himself stable here. We wanna try to get that back straight though, so yep, just like that, perfect. As soon as I said that, chest went up, and get engaging in here to protect your spine as you come all the way up. Good, so we have Ryan holding the weight here, his arm is hanging straight down. I wanna see your reps, go ahead Ryan. Yeah, just do them how you normally would. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I want you to stretch and reach a little bit more. So what we're trying to do with this exercise is we're trying to really open up in those mid-range traps here, and then really drive that shoulder back and around. Now, I want you to think about driving your elbow towards this point right here, as close as you can to touching you. Good. Now this movement is a great movement for your mid back. So this is gonna be your mid traps, your rhomboids, your lower traps, and your upper lats as it comes across. This comes through, good. So there's quite a bit of torso rotation here. That's pretty normal when you're doing this exercise. Same kind of thing as before, too much torso rotation is just gonna be you working your core. You're not gonna be putting everything in your back. But it's part of the way that your body's naturally going to want to move as you do perform these kinds of reps. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit more of a lat movement, what we would do is when we're down here like so, we would actually almost feel like as if you're pushing the weight forward, and then from here, we're really gonna drive that elbow back and down and around. So think about trying to put your elbow right here. Yeah, and go ahead, switch in, and then back it up and around. And this is gonna create a little bit more of that angle pulling diagonal here. Remember, you're thinking the line of pull dictates which part of your back you're hitting. So now that we're pulling in this diagonal, we're gonna hit more over here in those lats, where we could actually just come back down like so. How's your arm holding up? Good. Good? If we wanted to hit that upper back a little bit more, what we could do is we could actually change the grip so it's a pronated overhand grip, elbows pointed outwards, and now what Ryan's gonna do, he's gonna row up with his elbow out going out wide. I want your elbow wide. Yeah, like this. Yeah. Good. And so now what we're doing is we're hitting mid and some upper traps, as well as we're getting a lot of that rear delt as well. Because remember, that rear delt just moves the humerus from down here to here in that 90-degree angle. Good. Now when you're doing the one-arm dumbbell rows, if you're working your right arm first, you're holding part of your body weight up with your left arm. If you immediately go from working your right side into your left side, you're gonna be like, oh man, my left side's so much weaker than my right. The main reason is actually going to be mostly because you are supporting yourself with that arm. And even though it's not the working arm in the exercise at that moment, it is still going to accumulate some fatigue. Now for some people, your left arm is gonna be way weaker than your right, but under most circumstances, it's not gonna be drastic. And if it feels like it's drastic, then maybe you need to wait a little bit in between doing right to left. What I cue to most of my clients in sessions is to wait 20 seconds between doing right to left, just to make sure your left side has the time to be able to recover, make sure that you're getting all the reps possible. So go ahead, Ryan, hop back in. We'll do the standard ones first. Good. Dropping it down. Good. Really thinking about trying to contract back here in that mid back. Good, I want you to reach down and forward a bit, so we're gonna work on that more of a diagonal. Good, there, good. Because again, this angled line of pull is going to hit those muscles in that direction. Just do one more like this. Okay, go ahead and all the way down. Pronate that grip, elbows wide, other way. Yep, good, elbow wide, and then up like so. So you're thinking, just like letting that shoulder really drive up and back. Try to think about squeezing back here. Good, you don't even have to pause it up at the top, you're good. Yep. Good. Just do 2 more, Ryan, you're good. One more. Good. Back to the last bit with the basics. We are gonna do a barbell row as well, but there are 2 main different ways to do this. Main different grips, of course. So we're gonna have Ryan perform this with an overhand grip first. We're gonna see how it looks. We're gonna make some adjustments, and then we're gonna change it to the underhand grip to focus lats afterwards. So here you are, Ryan. You go ahead. So the first thing we're gonna do is to stand all the way upright first. The first thing that I always cue is standing all the way upright. And so what that does, it's gonna be chest is up high, and you're engaging all the muscles in your back to protect your spine. Now from here, your foot placement doesn't really matter. Like I personally like to have my feet a little bit more narrow. Some people like wider stance. That doesn't matter, so don't worry about that. What does matter is whether or not you can hinge the hips properly, and the discomfort that comes with that. So for some people, what you're gonna need to do is bend your knees a little bit as you hinge back. So Ryan, chest is up high, hinge those hips back, bend your knees a little bit for comfort. Good, and then one thing to remember is the more parallel you are with the ground, the more of your mid back you're gonna hit, the more angled upright you are, the more of your upper back you're gonna hit. Because the line of pull is directly against gravity and essentially the way that you're pulling up. And so it depends on where you want to hit. So the more, if you go to get a little bit more parallel, good, right here. Think of that arch right here in your back. Good, perfect. Go ahead and row. So I want those elbows a little bit wider. Yep, sorry. So I'm not sure if you guys watched the video all about chest, but one thing we want is you want to make sure your elbows and your wrists are stacked. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pause, pull all the way up. So from here, I want you to go a little bit outwards with your grip. So move your hands outwards, right about there. Good. So what we're seeing now is your elbows and wrists are a little bit better aligned. And so this could probably feel a little bit more natural, and you're gonna get a little bit more back than you will bicep. So go ahead, touch down. Good. Those elbows are already going back further. We're getting less flexion in at the elbows, so it's gonna be a little bit less of that bicep. Good, how's that feeling, Ryan?
Definitely feeling the bar.
Good. Now with this, you can put the bar down, stand it upright if you'd like. With that pronated overhand grip, again, remember, you're gonna be hitting more of that upper back with those rear delts. You are thinking about that line of pull, so the more upright you are, the more upper back it's gonna be, the more parallel you are with the ground, the more of your mid back it's going to be. So keep in mind that that's there as well. Next, what we're gonna do though is we're gonna show the underhand grip. Now, when you do the underhand grip with this barbell, it's going to be a little bit more biased towards your lats. So go ahead, Ryan, and grab the barbell. You're gonna be a little bit more narrow than we showed you there, probably about where you were now. Good. So with this, you're gonna have your elbows tucked in as much as you can, and you wanna try to have your hands at the same width as your elbows. So as you pull in, you're pulling in a straight line backwards. So we're gonna go chest up high. We're gonna hinge at the hips. Good, let the arms kind of hang out in front of you. So one thing you're gonna notice right away is when we change the grip on this, the line of pull automatically changes, and he's almost pushing the barbell out as he comes through the eccentric and pulling it in diagonally as it's coming up, and it's gonna get significantly more of that mid back with that upper lat as well. Everything else on this is really, really good though. We have his wrists and his elbows properly aligned so that they pull in a straight direction. Good. We're not getting too much bicep engagement. He's getting enough shoulder movement. Good, you can stand it up right. As you saw with Ryan's exercises, he wasn't sitting there throwing the weight around, huffing and puffing and just trying to move it. He was fully controlled with every rep on every exercise, and then that is the proper way to perform exercise. So good job, Ryan, with that. Full control is necessary. You guys make sure you have good form with these exercises. Nobody wants to get hurt. I don't want you guys getting hurt. Nobody wants that shit. Injuries last forever. You're gonna get injured in the gym, but try to make it so that it's not by your own doing and not by ignorance. So thanks for coming and watching the video, guys. Drop your comments and questions down below, and I'll catch you next week with another video.